talk, right? And so when we were starting to do some of these huge quantitative studies, but we always end our studies with focus groups with kids, just to make sense of like what are we seeing in the numbers. And so every spring we talk to kids about what's going on in their lives, and we started to talk to kids. In about 2000, we started to really hear messages from gender nonconforming youth and sexually minority kids, and even just heterosexual kids. There's just a lot of nasty language around kind of FAG, that's so gay, that was just kind of the normal kind of nomenclature, if you will, of the ways in which kids interacted. And so then we started to look at the research, and in fact, Listen, which is the Gay, Lesbian, Straight Education Network, which really advocates for sexual minority youth, had written about this for a long time. So this wasn't anything new, it's just they talked about those kids, right? So they weren't taken seriously because they were seen as biased, not a real objective research entity. They still are plagued with that kind of reputation, but people are starting to pay attention in some ways. And so we know that LGBT, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and I say that because I remember giving a talk in Florida to 600 school psychologists last year, and I said LGBT. I kept saying LGBT. And they came up at the break and they're like, what's LGBT? Oh. And I said, are you kidding me? I'm in the Florida School Psychology Conference, and of course I shamed them when I got back up on the podium, because I was like, LGBT, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender. Like, oh, thanks. I'm like, wow, school psychology. So that was last year. So we have a lot of work to do. So that's why I say LGBT. Now, understanding that transgender really shouldn't be going with lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender is kind of a separate entity and in some ways much more complex. So we have published extensively on this. I wrote the White House paper. We're very successful in getting a paper published in the leading educational journal, Educational Researcher. When you have the leading American Educational Research Association use their journal pages, which are precious, to say that LGBT issues are there and that they're being victimized and there's high rates of suicide, then you know you have really broken into something different. So certainly we developed a scale at that point and then started to unpack what kids were experiencing. Now I'm going to tell you a lesson too. You need to know this as teachers because you may go into, and you will, some of you will go into schools in which there will be a homophobic principal. You're going to have it. Parents will think that it's not your role in any capacity to introduce sexual orientation to your kids. Kids don't understand what gender is. They don't understand the socialization of it. We don't talk to kids about gender unless you're in a really kind of affluent, progressive rights. And so, for the most part, you have to be very, very political about this. I recognize very clearly that when I'm in the southern part of Illinois, I can talk very differently than when I'm in Chicago public schools, right? Where they kind of, there's just a reality versus a Bible. Got it. And so, well, I learned this lesson the hard way, right? So I share this experience because once we uncovered in our research that lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender youth had risk for suicide, I wanted to shout it from the treetops, right? I just wanted to tell people we need to protect these kids. Naive I was. So I remember being invited to a suburb of Chicago, but far enough of a suburb, rural kind of area. There were 1,200 people in the audience. And I put up all the suicide statistics, which I'm not going to show you here today. You should just know they're at elevated risk for suicide. And even if we eradicate peer victimization in the school, they'll still be at risk for suicide, because guess what? We're homophobic outside of that context. So here I am, I'm presenting all these suicide, there's suicide, we gotta save the world. As I started to present, even the words lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, there's 1,200 people with utter silence. You could have dropped it in. And you can imagine, I'm kind of into it. I can tell when an audience is just, like, what is she doing? Did you hear it? Is she talking about the gays? And I just stopped. And at that moment, I'm sure my face was like, I knew in my head. And I was like, are we having some issues here? 1,200. I mean, big watch on. And they were like, just keep moving. Just get through with these slides. And they pushed me through those slides. I was escorted out of that town by the sheriff, essentially, right? And so I learned then, and I was just traumatized, right? Because I'm kind of a sensitive person. Like I thought like, we just knew that life wasn't good, wasn't really, we could fix this. Like it's a problem we can fix, right? So then, Paul Petit and I, my student now that's at Boston, Boston College, saving the world, doing great work. We sat literally in a depression of like, what do we do? Like, how do we reach these people? We're not going to get everybody, but how do we get like normal folks like you and I to recognize we need to do something different? So this is what we did. And it got published without even like any revisions. So we went in and we asked kids, 7th through 12th grade, 2 simple questions. Because I thought in my mind, okay, the suicide thing's not working, because if you're really religious and you're a Christian, you would say, of course they're suicidal. They've gone against our faith. Of course, this is God punishing them, right? I didn't know if anybody would take that angle, but people still say that to me. Sinners are punished, right? And so I could never stay friends with someone who told me he or she was gay or lesbian. We asked 7th through 12th graders this question. 1 in 3 7th graders strongly agreed with this statement. So what we do now is we take these 2 questions into the schools. We then feed the data back to the kids. And we say, 1 out of 3 of you, count down, said they would never stay friends with you if you came out to them. And I say, what's your name? Jamie, you're a 7th grader, okay? Jamie? Okay? Yeah, totally awesome. That's our luck. Okay, so what I say is, and these data go from 1 out of 3 to 1 out of 2, and we feed the data. This isn't national data, this isn't Northern data, this is you. Jamie, is that what you said? Okay. Jamie, what do you think about that number? Why wouldn't you be friends with, what's your name? Vince, if he came out to you, because you're best friends. Like change your clothes and in the locker room. Why would you not be friends with him?
Because I don't feel that way, I guess.
You don't know you answered this one. You would not stay friends with him. Play along. I know you're a 7th grader. Okay. You're a 7th grader. Okay? You're really concerned about why, if you're a 7th grader, I'm telling you, you would not be friends with him. It's not the cool thing to do. Why else, Jim? Does anybody want to help Jim? Girls can't help. Don't rescue the boys. Vince, who's now been shunned by Jamie, is going to do. Why would he not be friends with you?
I think he's gay.
Hello. And a normal 7th grader, we don't have this issue coming back. They're like, you kidding me? You're going to think I'm gay. You know what else they said? What if he wants me? You know, the 7th grade boys are narcissistic. Right? Everybody wants them. This is developmental psychology. The 7th grade world like revolves, right? It's like a sponge. And so they very easily will say, now, you give this data to the 12th graders and they're like, look, we're so much more inclusive. Now, birthday boy, you're a 12th grader. Now, why do you think, and we actually have this kind of dialogue. I'm not talking suicide. I'm just talking like, why wouldn't you be friends? Like, because you're setting the tone, right? Your name again, Dave? Dave. Okay, Dave. You're a 12th grader. Because you're proud. 12th graders are like, look, we remain friends. Why would you be friends in 12th grade? Because what has happened between 7th and 12th grade? Well, a lot of things.
Because there's not that, I don't know why it is, but there's not the stigma of losing all of your friends and all of that.
Yeah. By this time, you probably had a few people come out, right? Just developmentally, it's going to happen. You've had more experiences. And by 12th grade, we know there's a whatever. Do whatever you want. This isn't middle school where everybody's concerned about what you're doing. By 12th grade, we have cliques, we have niches, right? And so we have a conversation. And in some of these schools where we can put together the high school kids with the middle school kids, they talk about their experiences of their friends coming out. And they talk about, well, you know, yeah, that's true. They may think that you are because you were hanging out with friends. But are you going to make the risk of saying, well, I don't want to take a friend away from him? Okay? It gets worse. It gets worse. I was like, you guys have flip ahead on your iPad. It gets worse. Okay, this one is real positive, right? I would rather attend a school where there are no gay or lesbian students. And you Wisconsin, which is a progressive district in Wisconsin. Okay? So you need to understand, we got some progressiveness in here. 1 out of 2, essentially, 7th graders said, I'd prefer if they're not here. Harkens back to, I prefer if certain racial groups aren't in our school. 1 out of 2. Now this is disturbing. If you do a school climate survey in your school and you have this, you have a problem. Now I remember presenting these results and Deerfield, Wisconsin. And it was even worse, it was 67% in that particular school. And every time I present to kids, I would kind of look and see who has social capital, who's popular, and who's going to kind of help me out with my point. And I see a cheerleader, and they're all the 7th and 12th graders are kind of sitting, we put them all together, and I just want to present these results. She stands up, and she's a cheerleader, so I knew she had capital, right? She got up. You make me sick. She was talking to her peers. This is good. It's good. I haven't. And she said, my uncle is gay, and the fact that you wouldn't want him in school, that intervention itself, because she had social capital, I could have spoke about it while I was like red in the face, and I did. I just backed off, and she said, we need to do something about this. And she had social cheerleading, she had social capital, and she broke it down. And I said, my work is done. This is, you need to know your climate. If you have this kind of situation, that's a problem. Because not only do Jacob want to be friends with Vince, but the people don't want you there, right? And recent research has shown if you have a presence of an effective gay-straight alliance, published by Boutique, 2014 essentially. And listen, when you have a GSA, there's less victimization for all people in that school, right? But you're going to be in some schools where you can't call it GSA. Do you understand this? There's going to be pushback. So in some schools, it's TREE, Tolerance, Respect, and Education and Equity or something. But it's essentially GSA. So we need to have those types of things in place because of these statistics. So I could say, you have suicide attempts and suicide. This is what got their attention. That you have a climate where kids are not wanted. Unbelievable. And so, so we published another paper with more recent data, 2011, and found that in fact the LGBT community is quite diverse, right? So there's this, we don't want to pathologize this population either, because I was talking to somebody at lunch and back there who high school, and name again is
Dominic.
Yeah, he's a singer and plays an instrument. And your experience was once you created the GSA in the high school, you felt it was getting better, right?
Yeah.
Right? And so what we do not want to do is to say that all LGBT youth are pathological. You don't want to do that, right? So we have to be very, very careful. That context matters. And there are some gay youth, very small percentage, that families are supportive of them. It's a very small percentage. And they're also, in one of my high schools right now, the lesbians are the most popular. And they recruit, right? So there's this kind of interesting thing happening there. The principal's like, it's interesting, like, can you tell us something about the lesbians recruiting? I was like, no, we'll study that. I don't know anything about that. I don't know. It's just not. And then if you don't join them, they like beat you up. And I said, I don't have any data on that. I don't know. So it's very diverse. You just felt like you could go into a very inclusive school, and you should just be happy about it. Okay? But if you're not, you know, and who do kids come out to? Teachers. First, teachers. So if you don't know how to respond, and it could just, you know, just have your little rainbow somewhere in your office. Little rainbow thing. And then they'll know that's safe, ally. If you don't handle that, and we've done focus groups and big studies, that first experience of coming out, it doesn't go well, guess what they do? They stay in. Okay? So you need to be ready. We should role play, but we don't have time. Role play. How are you going to handle this? Okay. On the positive side, the majority of the LGBT in this study are not at risk. Now, when LGBT youth are having a difficult time, they have it early, and we only
only study 7th grade, so we don't know when it started, but the 7th graders, when they're at risk, they're at elevated risk. When they have suicidal ideation, they attempt more often. Right? So it's a smaller percentage, but the risk is significant. And in a follow-up paper, we found that when we control for peer victimization, imagine that we're just all so happy and there's no name calling and everybody's equal and we're a community, everything's just beautiful, there's still elevated risk, right? Because they live in communities, the parents that will not accept them, they have religious kind of thing, doctrines that go against kind of their behavior, and generally society still has a rough time with this. We have all these things happening in institutions, so we kind of have to think about that. And this is really kind of raising the awareness of educational equities and identification, and this is where I said that even when we kind of level the playing ground with peer victimization, there is still elevated risk for LGBT youth. And we know very little about the T. Right? When we try to publish on transgender, reviewers will say, do kids even know what that means? I was like, what you're saying to me is you don't know what it means. And here's a definition of what transgender is. If you live it, you will have a transgender youth in your school during your tenure. You will. And it is challenging, but there's lots of resources that are emerging. The National Transgender Center, and things to think through this. It's challenging because of just basics like facilities and restrooms and those types of things. So we also know that if you hang out with kids that engage in homophobic bantering, you will engage in that language too. So if that's just what you do, is to call you so gay, you're such a fag, homo, and then they actually even just have all kinds of campaigns around this. But that will be socialized into doing that. It's called homophily. It's another word, homophily. Birds of a feather flock together. You hang out with kids that sing and play an instrument, you're probably going to sing and play an instrument, right? You hang out with kids that smoke pot, you're probably going to smoke pot. If you hang out with kids that use this banter that marginalizes other kids when they're gender nonconforming, you're going to do it too. Statistically, we know this, and this is where we have to intervene at the peer level, which we don't necessarily do. Now, the gay-straight alliance, that's the mechanism, right? So you bring kids together, they're gay or straight, you bring them together and you try to change the peer norm. So you can, as music teachers, there has to be a faculty coordinator of the TSA, and that could be you. But know that you might get some pushback from parents. Those letters really get them stirred up. Like me. Yeah, but I'm like straight too, straight, like the S. But you said gay. Yeah. Yeah, you have to think through those things. Okay. Now I could go on and on and on about that. Now, at the end of this beautiful PowerPoint that you have, and I think there's 100 on the slides, right? You're looking at it. 114. Sorry. I want to make sure you got it all. It was 20 years ago. And I could have put like a million more. At the end of this, you should know that there's links to all kinds of really good resources. Okay? And that means Glisten, and that means the Trevor Project, and it means all those beautiful things. Like I am giving you so many resources. Okay, so let me just talk to you, though, before we move on to some more tragic longitudinal data that show that we're just violence across the lifespan. It's not simple, right? And so it's not simple to just to have a TSA. It's not simple for us to just live in our little kind of bubble and think that everybody's going to think this way. And it's not as simple as I can wish it away. Let me tell you about it. It gets better. So, you know the It Gets Better campaign. And Dan Savage is a friend of mine. We're at the White House. And I was like, you know that just because you have people make videos, it's not just going to get better. He was like, that's a negative way of thinking. And I'm like, so a colleague of mine, some colleagues at Stanford, as good researchers, we don't think it's as simple as me watching a video of somebody online saying it's going to get better if I'm in misery, right? Right? Come on, it doesn't take a psychologist to say. There's a reason why we pay psychologists, right? If I just thought it gets better, I'd just say it gets better. So how many have watched some of It Gets Better? Who does not? Does everybody know? Who does not know what it is? Oh my goodness. Okay. Now, most teachers that I present to, they don't know it either. Okay? So It Gets Better campaign is Dan Savage created this program where you got all the superstars and the President of the United States getting on and doing these short videos to say, like Obama, I was bullied because I have big ears, and it's okay, look at me. Well, that's a stretch, right? Oh, yeah, I'm going to be President of the United States. All right, that sounds good. Lady Gaga got on there. We got a whole thing. Ellen DeGeneres, everybody's on there. You know, the head of HHS, whatever. We could get on there. We could get on there right now and sing that song and say, it's better. And no, okay. So at Stanford, what they did was, because we suspected that it wasn't that simple, because the young man in Rochester that killed himself, who filmed one of those It Gets Better, 1 month prior to him killing himself, and Lady Gaga then launched the Born This Way Foundation based on him, his story. He had filmed one of those, and it's really kind of scary to watch. When I was on Anderson Cooper, they showed the film of that because his parents were on the show with me. And here he is, it's going to get better because, you know, there's people out there that will support me. He videotapes himself, and a month later he hangs himself on the swing outside, and his sister found him. And then she sang on Anderson Cooper. You guys would have been so proud. She had like a guitar out. She like sang the song that she created for her brother. And so we said, okay, clearly it's not that simple. So we went in and we collected just a random sample of It Gets Better videos. We content analyzed them. 50% of them had the message, it gets better because you can get the hell out of your small town and go to a city where there's people like you. Right? Half of them said, it gets better because people are going to come around. Like, things are getting better, right? We see people like me on the TV, they raise children, they own homes, they own businesses. So you hear this, you don't have to uproot and leave your town and go to the big city where there's clubs, right? So now which one would put you in a better mood? Move from your family, go find a new family, go somewhere you don't want to go, or society's eventually going to come around. Society eventually come around. Well, we're just not going to guess that. We did a randomized kind of study where we randomly assigned kids to different videos, and we tracked their mood. And they tracked their like sense of hopelessness and helplessness. When they heard pack up and go to Champaign, because they have 3 gay bars, they were depressed. So Champaign isn't one of your own night and go, okay, but it's better than Rancho down the street, right? When they heard it's going to get better because things are changing, and there's this same-sex marriage, and you know, life you can still be this, you know, be rich, right? Their mood was better. So it's not the message. We cannot think that this is simple, because what happens if you think that we've made the progress? And now I'm starting to like talk to you like I do with congressmen and senators, is to say we get lazy. And women, we have done this, right? We have done this. Like the Violence Against Women Act was almost like not reauthorized so that you could actually have men beat on women. You have nothing to say about it. You don't know what I'm talking about, but you should. Anyway, violence against women. We got to keep chasing this. And I sit with principals every day and say, you are not going to talk to the kids about gender. And you're not going to talk about sexuality. I said, I'm not talking about sexuality. I'm talking about the fact that when they say that, when they call that kid a fag, he doesn't even know he just wants to play video games. He doesn't even know if he likes boys and girls. But God, they keep calling him a fag all the time. And he's always wondering, am I gay? I don't know. I just want to play like we. Just want to play we. Like what? So we can't. This is your responsibility. I mean, it is your responsibility, and be aware. But it's not an easy fix. And the minute we think it's an easy fix is when you get your rights wrong, right? I mean, think about Martin Luther King. How much farther ahead are we, really, when we have that? Okay, you guys get that? Okay. That's why they don't let me out very much. They want me to be the chair of the department. I was like, can you see me? I don't think you want me making a decision, no, I'll just bring it along. Okay, now, one angle that I've taken, too, is to get access to schools is to say it's not about homosexuality. It's actually about a climate in which we marginalize gender nonconforming youth. Okay? Gender nonconformity is way different than sexual orientation. That's that tomboy phenomenon which we're allowed to do. Girls can do whatever they want. You can wear makeup, not wear makeup, and now you're in a gender box. And so it's also, we're creating climates. The minute somebody is called the 5-letter word that starts with a P, you guys can work on that. Work on it. Okay? Like teachers, 5 letters, like the minute the 5-letter P word comes out, that is around putting boys into a gender box because you don't want to act like a P. But the P is denigrating girls. Okay? So we're setting the groundwork, and Michael Kimmel, who's a beautiful sociologist, has been talking about, he says our middle schools are breeding grounds for sexual violence against women and policing masculinity against men, right? There's a reason why men and boys are challenged. Everyone in here should know, right? And so we have to recognize that bullying is a precursor to sexual violence, which then is a precursor to teen dating violence. And I'm going to show you some very cool, beautiful pictures. So same cohort of kids that we followed through 2010. Lots of males and females. See, this is where I'm going to get through those slides, right? You think not, huh? Okay, so I often hear from people like, well, you know, they don't even really know what gay means. They just, gay could be happy. I'm like, okay. Maybe in kindergarten that's what they mean, but by 5th and 6th grade they know exactly what gay and fag means. And they know the 5 letter word that starts with G. Okay? And in this study of 5th and 6th, 7th graders that find longitudinally, what do you see? 34% of these are engaging in high rates of this. And this is like 3 standard deviations above the mean. You don't know what that is. It means a serious problem here with this circle. Okay? Serious problem. And guess what? The girls are doing it too. Right? Girls police boys more in their gender than even sometimes the boys do. We do not like, ladies, when boys cry. It scares us. You're like, what is wrong with you? You have a problem with your eyes right now. And so William Pollock out of Harvard and Real Boys, you can read about this. We police their emotionality. We push them into restrictive emotionality. So you as a teacher, because you haven't gotten this in your pre-service kind of teacher training stuff, and you're not going to get it because you don't know how to talk gender for the most part, because it's not in our curriculum. How do you deal with that? How do you talk gender in your classroom? Well, at the end of this PowerPoint, there's lots of resources for that, right? So there's coaching boys and men, there's shifting boundaries, there's straight-laced, and all kinds of things that we're probably not going to get to today, but that's okay. So it's a problem, and it's alive and well. It's a language that we use. Teachers don't stop this language. They don't stop it. You guys are going to stop it. I know. That's right. What happens in this moment? Woo! This took 1 year to make. Okay, so here, birthday boys. We have bullying perpetration up top here. Fall, spring, all the same kids. Just imagine kids in the bowls. Okay, you ready? Okay, kind of like jumping. These are my shapes. Yeah. Like bullying. This is homophobic teasing. So let me tell you how we ask this. We ask kids, some kids call other kids homo, dyke, fag. How often in the last 30 days have you called the following people these names? A friend, someone you didn't know, someone you think is gay, someone you didn't like, someone you don't know even know their sexual. Right? We normalize it, right? Beyond an item. Okay, birthday boy, what does this show? Because we are trained up in analytics, trained to model people.
That if somebody is bullying,
No, perpetration.
Okay. So if somebody bullies somebody else, chances are they're going to engage in homophobic teasing, which is going to be more bullying.
Yeah, so it doesn't go, we don't have the cross. Right? It doesn't feed one another, but you're exactly right. This is a causal model. And this is so beautiful, it's actually in a methods book by Toddler. Okay? That's beautiful. And this shows, this serves a purpose. This is not just benign language, okay? And I'm going to show you, there's more circles. I'm pretty sure I have more circles. Okay, so this is a causal link. This is a developmental progression. I will be mean to you. I will call you four eyes. I will call you chubby. I will call you names. By the time I get to middle school, 7th grade, it then becomes gendered and bias-based. The minute you deviate, or the minute I don't like you, then I'm going to start calling you these names. And boys and girls do it, and this model fits beautifully for both.
There's the little loops on the tops and bottoms.
Oh, those are covariates and residuals. Those are stats. You don't. I know you're so good. So these are kind of residuals. So this is structural equation modeling, and what you see is you see the lags.
Okay.
Yeah. And these are things. So they kind of co-vary. Yeah. And these are those other things you asked about. These are kind of the relations.
And what is
Butch.
is 0.051 like a p-value?
Yeah. Where are you looking at?
The one that you point to in the circle?
No, this is root mean square error of approximation, and this is you want it close to 0. And 0.05 means that this is truth. Feeling good about that, Rich?
But it functions the same way, like there's only 5% chance, different.
No. Yeah. He's talking about probability. So if you have a p less than 0.05, 5 times out of 100, you make a mistake if you say that that's statistically significant. No. This you want it closer to 0.
Okay.
Yep. It's a model fit indice, not a
Ah, okay.
probabilistic. Yep. And p-value wouldn't really help us here, Butch, because we're overpowered. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yes.
Homophobic bullying agent measures?
Yes, HCAT. Homophobic content agent target scale. We call it HCAT. Okay, so essentially take our messages from here, and I'm pretty sure there's going to be more circles, so don't get too upset. No circles there. Homophobic name calling is prevalent in middle school. Youth and bullying resort to homophobic name calling over the middle school years, and bullying prevention programs should include a discussion of this, and you're going to see that in fact we don't. And we're trying to do it in a study we're launching now, and we're getting major pushback about wanting to talk about these things in the classroom, because that will make them gay if we talk about it. So, building on this, that was published in Journal of Adolescent Health. This one's a Journal of Adolescent Health as well. So remember I said that Michael Kimmel said that middle schools are breeding grounds for sexual violence, and we care about sexual violence now among middle school and high schoolers and college campuses, because guess what? Sexual assault is the highest it's ever been in this country for middle school and high school and college-age students. Why are we talking about it? Because your vice president cares. Your Vice President Biden was the author of the Violence Against Women Act. Actually, it's probably his wife that's the author, right? Just saying. And so we've been to the White House for teen dating violence and sexual violence 4 times in the last 2 years. Right? They just convened something because it's unbelievable. So sexual assault on college campuses. So what I'm trying to make an argument that, one, this homophobic language needs to be targeted in prevention programs because it is a precursor to sexual violence and teen dating violence. In this study, we actually showed longitudinally, and we've extended it beyond our other ways, but know that, in fact, bullying perpetration is associated with sexual harassment perpetration. Now, in middle school, I'm not talking about rape or sexual assault. We're talking about a lot of just sexual commentary, sexual rumor spreading, and inappropriate touching. And this is where I need a violin. Who knows the nervous game? Oh! Open your ears! So who does not know the nervous games? Okay. So you should know, in the middle of this study, we do a focus group, because we always do kind of regroup with the kids, and they kept talking about the nervous game. We're like, what the hell is that? So then they did, what is the nervous game? I'm very secure with my sexuality.
I mean, it's like the way back I done it is where you go up, like your leg, nervous yet, like nervous yet.
Once we figured out what the nervous game is, you have to understand that every generation is going to have their own thing, right? So some of you had the colored bands that would show what you would do and how far you would go. Those are back. The nervous game and juke parties are still alive and well. And reflecting on the numbers, this is the highest number of hands I've ever seen raised, and it's because it's your generation's game. Now, who played the nervous game but actually didn't like playing it? There you go. Okay. The minute you don't like playing it and you don't want to play it, what is it called? Sexual harassment. Now, because we are not Title IX compliant in our schools, kids don't know what sexual harassment is. Teachers don't feel comfortable talking about it. They don't even know who their Title IX coordinator is for sexual harassment prevention. So they engage in these games when they're uncomfortable. And I had a young girl just a couple weeks ago, I said, well, what do you do? Where are you playing? She said, at school, but we do it in the movie theaters too. And I said, well, it makes you feel uncomfortable. She said, yeah, sometimes my stomach will hurt, like I just don't want to play this. And then you show them the Supreme Court decision and definition of sexual harassment. I said, it's unwanted. Do you understand? Like, it's unwanted. And they play it in the hallway where teachers are walking past. Right? And the teachers will talk about sexual harassment. So So for me, if I get in an argument to say this is not benign activity and it leads to something that we're not intervening in, that's a problem. Right? It's unwanted. And we know that if you're engaging in somebody's touching your body, one, and just the boundaries of it, then what, kids have no boundaries. So this is going to be part of you as a teacher. You need to help them understand their personal space, which must be challenging as they're lining up on those chairs so close to one another. Right? So how do you have this personal space? And this is your body. There's lots of strategies for doing that, right? Lots of resources for doing this. This is a concern. The fact that so many of you know the nervous gap, and you're in schools that you probably did not get sexual harassment prevention training. Not in this state of Ohio, right? No. Only starting, and you're supposed to get it in like second grade. Right? So, because schools, so this is a concern. This is longitudinally associated here. Ooh. Now you can understand if you have any issues, follow the nervous gap. So we know that there are longitudinal associations between bullying, homophobic bantering, and sexual harassment perpetration. Now, do I have this figure? Not even know. Okay. This is intriguing. So what do we do? Right? So if I can get in my prevention programs, I would like all of us to explore our gender and get in this other gender box and understand men and women and all this stuff. But there's no time in the day for that, right? Because there's no child left behind, and we gotta get the test scores up because we're not making anybody happy. So if I could, in some of the schools, what I say, okay, can you just do this, teachers? Can you just, when you hear that homophobic language, can you just tell them not to use it? I said, do you allow the N-word? No. No. We don't talk like that here. Do you allow the R-word? Well, only sometimes because I used it, I would just, say the R-word. Everybody know what I mean with the R-word? Yeah. Yes, it's right, your young generation. But some of us still use the R-word. We're like, work on that. Why would you allow that other word? Well, if you believe it's benign, then you don't stop. And I don't need you to necessarily go into the history of what actually a fag is, like it's a cigarette over in London, and there's like gays actually they're rooted. You don't have to do all this history, but you just say we don't use that language. Just stop some of the language. Is it going to correct the situation long term? Probably not. Why don't we just not use it? Can we just cut down on the language that you hear this, right? But I also wanted to understand, remember those circles. I want to understand, well, how those circles really play out. Is there something more malleable that we can focus on? Well, going back to the writing of Kimmel, and he talked about the policing of masculinity. What the hell does that mean? It means that traditional masculinity, that boys have to act a certain way. And we can talk about multiple masculinities. Did you know that there's multiple masculinities? You don't know that because you weren't taught it, right? There's different ways for boys and men to demonstrate masculinity. And it actually could be carrying masculinity, responsibility. It doesn't have to be like, right? And so there's different ways to express care, right? The minute you show emotion, you're placed into this traditional masculinity. In traditional masculinity in middle school, it's not like, like a woman needs to stay home and needs to be pregnant. No. It's so not focused on the level. So it's, I think, already in middle school, girls have a sense of what dating looks like if you date a boy. That the boy needs to make the decisions in the relationship. That the boy needs to pay when you go to the movies. Right? I had to pay today for lunch.
I asked her for the bill.
So what we found, and this is actually a top level school too, is we find the association between bullying, Jacob, it'll be fun. Come to Illinois, you have fun. It's good. It's good. This is multiple masculinities. You're vulnerable. It's okay. It's okay. It's good. What's character? So you have bullying, and you have this association with sexual violence. What kind of what's in between? So we already know there's kind of this homophobic language that's kind of a precursor. And this is what's called a moderator variable in statistics. And this means that the relationship between bullying and sexual violence isn't one, right? It's not deterministic. If I bully in 6th grade, it doesn't mean that everybody that does that is going to then engage in sexual commentary and make people play the nervous game, right?
that it actually depends on a third variable, and that's a moderator variable. And I'll say it 3 different ways when I teach this. That the relationship between bullying and sexual violence across the middle school depends on that third variable of traditional masculinity. The relationship between bullying and escalating to sexual violence depends on, and is changed, is conditioned by that third variable. So if you engaged in bullying in 6th grade, you're more likely to engage in sexual violence, sexual harassment by 8th grade if you believe that boys should be stoic, talk about their sexual prowess, should not show any emotion. Because the minute that you experience any kind of homophobic banter, what do you think a 7th grade kid that's being called fag and gay does to show publicly that they are not gay? What do you think? Definitely that. But if you wanted to, if you were being called, what's your name? Louis. Louis! Good to see you, Louis. If they were constantly calling you fag and gay, and here's this, this, and this, what's the best way to squash any of the concerns that they might have? It's been a long time since we was president. Date a girl! He would do what he did again. He would date a girl. But everybody was like, well, he can't be gay if he's dating a girl. Right? So we find in our studies that that is definitely a strategy that's used, but publicly if it's in the hallway, then you will engage in the nervous game, or you will grab, as Nan Stein says, we're not putting on a swab, she said, they grab the nearest set of tits they can find. That's Nan Stein from Wellesley. That's her quote. She's been online with that. We're not posting that online. Not at all. No. You're like, hell no. Stand for here, this is what she would talk about. This is exactly, because we do not want to sugarcoat this, okay? The reason why there's violence against women in adulthood is there's training grounds somewhere, right? Yes?
Can you speak on this from the perspective of women in the regards of there's that gender box that we are put into, but then exploring any sort of control or strength is also then determined to be a masculine trait, even though, and then can you also talk about, you also talk about
story of my life. Yeah, everybody in here is
how
gonna,
there is some sort of like gender neutrality to a lot of things, like you should be who you are, but there also is beauty in things that are feminine that I can experience and feel that men can't, and then men, there's a beauty in the masculinity, but you don't have to be boxed into it.
oh my gosh. If you give 10% of what you just said to the students in your classroom, you will do 300% time more than they ever even talk about. Can you set up, let's put in straight laced. This follows this really good. Jacob, come on. You're okay now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Make sure I have it. Kaylee. Okay, so this is called straight laced.
I like that one. Just carry stuff around. Okay. Oh my God. Don't you hate when you're like ready to watch a movie and it's not in there? Okay, yes. So this is straight laced, and at the end of your PowerPoint, you'll see a link for GroundSpark. GroundSpark also made Let's Get Real. If you're in a school and they let you show this to your 7th and 8th graders, you're in a cool school. You're going to see in 5 minutes why people won't let us show this. Okay, so, and this Let's Get Real, they both come with curriculum, inexpensive. They essentially just want to be able to pay the documentaries for both. This is a bullying curriculum. I encourage you. I mean, if you want to set a tone in your class, just even show the video. So let's put it in. Come on, Jake. You're going to talk about me. Okay, so this is exactly the conversation that we need to have with kids. But we have generations of girls and boys, not my generation because we weren't in the gender box, that came after me, that these conversations didn't happen. And if you're No Child Left Behind, you didn't get any of this conversation. That's been 10 years, so think about it, of who you're teaching. Now, advisory is coming back into your school, so kids will start getting some of this content now because they said, ooh, maybe it's a good idea for kids to have some time where it's just not all academics. Right? Okay, we ready?
Yep.
Okay. So we'll listen to this for a little bit, but what you're struggling with is what these
Growing up, I pretty much know that guys are supposed to wear baggy clothing. You know, they gotta dress cool and they gotta match. They can't be all colorful unless of course they'll be teased, it'll look funny.
What size is this?
So that's pretty much from growing up, I pretty much know that you gotta match, you gotta dress cool, you gotta dress to impress.
And some white shoes though to go with you.
And that's pretty much how it is.
What y'all think it is?
Oh no. Oh no. That's a pretty boy type of style. You don't want to go. You gonna tell me right now you walking around with something like that, you gonna get shot. If a guy was wearing like some tight clothes, I'd probably make fun of him. Like I'd just be like, you know, why you wearing so tight clothes? I mean, like usually I wouldn't say anything. Like unless I knew the fool, I'd call him out for it. But like if it was just some regular dude just walking down the street wearing tight clothes, and it's not my business. Simple as that. Mind your own business. I'll still be looking at him like, just a little bit.
My average day would be, I wake up, I find some clothes, I make sure that they match. You know, like that's on my head. If I wear this with this, will they laugh at me? And when I enter the school building, things run through my head. I think like, what problems am I gonna get into today? Am I gonna make any friends? Am I gonna make any enemies? And like, am I gonna get teased for anything?
Well, I'm thinking about what they want me to wear, or like what is acceptable to them. Are these pants big enough? Are they baggy enough for them? Are they tight enough or whatever?
People do look at me funny and mention like, you know, things like, why am I not dressed like typical Mexican guys are? And like they expect me, because I'm Mexican, I should dress a certain like thuggish way or like a ghetto way, and it's just, that's not my style.
I've actually tried wearing this one shirt. It had like a little bit of pink in there. Though nobody said nothing because it was like white, it only had a little bit of pink. But overall, when I try to buy something, I always try to think of what other people think.
I want to be accepted. I don't want to be talked about. I don't want to be humiliated in front of everybody, in front of the whole school, and get that rumor spread about me, or like that he's gay or that he's this. I want to like be like them in a way, but I don't. I want to be myself, but I want to feel safe. I want to feel like, I want to just feel like kind of loved in a way. I want to feel appreciated.
Just got this recently, but I don't know what to put underneath it.
Yeah, you don't need to put your pants.
I wouldn't just get too, I then it would get too hot if I wore pants.
Yeah, or maybe.
Definitely, I've always felt pressure to look a lot nicer, putting on something nice or flattering to my body.
This one, I guess.
Really?
Heck yeah. And then this belt's like right underneath here.
And I always feel like my guy friends can just throw on a big t-shirt and some baggy pants and they look fine. But I feel like if I don't get up an hour and a half before I'm supposed to leave in the morning and I don't take care of myself and look good, that nobody's gonna notice me.
I feel like every day when you're flipping through channels on TV, there's this constant like onslaught of commercials of like, this is what a woman is. It's supposed to be like curvaceous and supposed to have like big boobs and big butt and skinny little waist. It's all the time, every day, 24/7.
And I watch music videos, I think it's disgusting. You got a whole bunch of ladies in bikinis outside with makeup on about to jump in the pool. And who wears makeup to go jump in the pool? You see a really hot girl on the billboard, you know, she has long legs. She's usually blonde and blue-eyed. It's kind of icky that you can post up ads like that in public where kids can see them, because they're really seriously like half naked. And I'm never gonna be like that. Simply said, I'm not gonna like lie to myself. But I don't think that's what's beautiful either.
Right. I think girls like to wear a lot of tight clothes that show their maybe some of their body parts, maybe some cleavage or maybe their belly button ring or some booty.
To middle school and high school kids, and I actually use it a lot with teacher training because they don't understand when I say do you do gender in the classroom, they don't know what I'm talking about. Now, that was a very short part of this, and you would enjoy the rest of it. It goes deeper. But what do you notice, what messages were you receiving already from the kids? Some obvious ones, but there's some more subtle ones. Yes, Matt.
They dress the way they do because they want to feel a sense of community and belonging, and they want to feel safe. They don't want to, break from the norm and be individuals.
Right, and it's going to vary. Context matters, right? So it's going to vary depending on, your school and what the trends are. But it's very, very clear and disturbing. The documentarists will tell you that this is the message she heard over and over and over again. That they spend more time thinking about their outfit and what they're going to wear versus homework or academics, right? There wasn't much of that discussion. What else do you notice? Yes?
Just like the last thing that those two guys were saying, it was that one who was like, I think that girls like to wear tight clothes and like to have their body, no.
Okay. So you can imagine, so what we do is we show this, the students love it, they resonate with it, and they bring up challenges, right? So we break the norms, and the girls are able to say, I don't like tight clothes, right? The girls are also, you saw media is heavy into this, right? If we're not talking to kids about the messages that they're getting from the media, this gets to your point, like you set this up beautifully. If we're not talking about, she said, look, I am not delusional, I am never going to look like that, right? And so you do media kind of literacy things with them to say, like, what's different about this picture? Because we used to do a lot of this when we were looking at body image in schools. We don't do much of this anymore, so we're bombarded with these messages of I have to be this and only can I look this certain way. You want to watch a little bit more? You do. Okay, a little bit more.
Where's some booty? I mean, I'm looking at the thickness and the quickness, you know what I mean? Like, if there's a girl that's let's say one girl's wearing like some baggy jeans or whatever, right? Ain't showing a single thing, wearing some baggy sweatshirt, right? And there's another girl right next to her wearing some tight jeans, some nice baby fat shirt or something, I don't know, whatever, right? Showing something, showing what she got, right? I guarantee you I'll pick the girl with the tight stuff.
I like a girl's hair like past her shoulders, but like not too short. Like clothes that fit her well, but nothing like really loose or like really short and tight, because then you kind of look like a slut.
The coral.
I think dressing for girls is quite an ordeal. I mean, there's so many like little details that they have to worry about. I mean, they make sure the shirt exposes cleavage, but doesn't expose too much. They have to wear short shorts, but it can't be too short.
Like one of my friends once, when I was wearing a low-cut shirt, was like, cover that up. I'm like your father. I don't want people looking at you.
Wait, turn around the little hole. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, it goes perfectly.
Whenever I dress like a girl, like, I feel that people are like judging me like that all the time. And I'm just, paranoid all the time. What are they thinking? They think my boobs are big, they think they're small, they think my butt's big. But when I dress the way that I do, I'm comfortable because I know I'm not showing anything. I know they're not going to be thinking of that. They're just like, oh, there's a chick. Cool. Whatever.
I look for something to wear that's a bit edgy. I'll try to wear like really tight pants and something with midriff just to shock a teacher or piss off some straight homo hater. I'll leave the house and I'll get a couple reactions. Some people might say, oh, that looks really nice what you're wearing. And some people might be confused and scared and they walk by. I look at it all and just laugh.
Wearing the shirt that I'm wearing right now, the purple color, I can tell just by looking in their eyes when they look at the shirt, automatically people think that I'm gay.
When a dude, like one day I was wearing a scarf, because my neck was cold, and he thought I was gay or something like that. And I told him, like, I'm not gay, my neck is cold.
It's hard to take that first step and put the scarf on. Something that looks sort of feminine, but it only looks feminine because of the associations people have made with it and because our culture in our high school.
I mean, I don't wear it as like a political statement. I just wear it because I really like the color purple. And if people can't realize that it's just a color, then that's their problem.
A lot of people all the time say I should dress more feminine or dress the way girls are supposed to dress. But, I mean, I'm the kind of person, I do what I want in a way what I feel is right.
Alright, what'd you like?
Can I get a hot dog?
I dress sporty. I wear basketball clothes every day. And can't play football in heels. Can't play football in some tight jeans. Can't play basketball in either of that either, so you know.
Yeah, ketchup and mustard.
Yes. If I'm dressed all in tight clothes, I feel like I can't be like that because I have to present myself different, like a young lady would. So like this, I could just be kicked back like, what's up? Because I don't have to set up a certain image for what I'm wearing.
Last week, I was on a bus, and I came and I sat down, and a lady up here tapped my shoulder, and I'm like, took my headphones, I'm like, huh?
She's like, how old are you? I'm like, 18.
And she's like, well, my daughter has a junior prom coming up, and we're looking for a date.
And you guys would look real nice together.
I said, that's real cool and everything, but I'm a girl. How did you think I was a dude? And she's like, because I thought you was a pretty boy.
You want one of these?
Nah, just about 3 or 4.
You know, once I tell them I'm a girl, they say, oh, yeah, she must be gay. And she must, you know,
That's
like.
gender nonconformity, right? And so this is alive and well. Alive and well. I have a gender nonconformity niece who loves Justin Bieber, and so she loves, well, it's very hard to love Justin Bieber, very conflicted right now, but she looks like a boy. And every time we go to dinner, the waiter will say, what does he want? And when this first started happening 2 years ago, she would burst into tears. She's like, what? And now she's like, I am a girl. And they're all embarrassed. Like, they need to just check themselves. They're like, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. I'm like, it's our society, right? And so this is real. We are real conflicted when there's a dissonance, right? Because you were thinking to yourself, too. Right? This is, within 15 minutes of this video, principals say, no way. No way. Really? Yes. If we keep playing it, it gets worse because the African American, he says, sometimes I just mess with them out there, girls, so they think this, and he kind of talks about this game that he plays. Yeah, they don't know what to do with this. Yeah. And this is a beautiful, it comes with these exercises, and you do the gender box game, a nice curriculum, it's great. But they said, no, I would be fired if we had these kind of conversations just about gender. Okay. Oh, and this was even Chicago Public Schools. They said, we're not touching it. So, but this is really, if you took my class for 15 weeks, we would all go through straight lace. You'd learn a lot about yourself. We would go through Let's Get Real, go through Shifting Boundaries. There's stuff out there, but you don't have to recreate this, right? You can do these activities with the kids, and they will thank you for it. This is their voice, right? The fact that we as a society, if you don't fit into one of those boxes, we get real confused real fast. And so this happened again with my niece, that she, and she looks like a boy. Like, I get it. Like, I get it. She kind of looked like the last girl on there. And I signed her up for basketball, and she turned out to be the only girl on the basketball team. Well, she doesn't tell people now that she just like, she's 14, so she likes to see just how adults make an ass out of themselves, right? And so I'm sitting on the bleachers, and her name's Mackenzie, so it could go either way, right? And so, I get mad, right? Here we have a coach that's working at the rec center. You better understand gender, buddy, right? Do not assume anything. Assumed it was a boy. For about 15 minutes, I let him coach what he thought was a he. And then when all the parents got there, and I was like, go Mackenzie, that's my niece. And they were sitting on the bleachers, and all the parents were like starting to work with niece. It's not a boy. I'm like, hell no, that's my niece. Go! And I was like, hey coach, it's a girl. Like, no. I'm like doing an intervention. The whole parents are like, and the boys won't throw her the ball. They're all freaked out. Oh yeah, it's great, intervention. So I ended up doing straight lace with that basketball team. I said to the parents, I was like, why are we a progressive Jewish, we are a progressive community here. Why is this confusing to everybody? Everybody was just, they didn't want to talk, they didn't want to look at her. She's a girl, she's 14. She likes Jordan. I don't know what to tell her. And I say to her, I was like, she has never worn a dress. I tried to get a dress on her when she was 5, and they're just like, and this is Chicago. This is real. Do you see what you started? Yes. Right.
So we've talked a lot about
all of these kind of social norms and gender things and sexuality within the confines of the student body, but do you ever talk about how you handle yourself as a teacher in this position if you are a person struggling with these things, or how you accept your sexuality, or how you present gender roles as a teacher, and then how does that become appropriate or inappropriate?
Yeah, so because the schools won't let us show this to the kids in the 36 schools, we're gonna put the teachers through it. Because we put the teachers through straight-laced in most of the schools we're at, and that's when no one's ever asked them about, what is your kind of gender orientation? If you say we don't use pronouns like he or she, they're very confused by that. They don't understand that, right? Because they weren't trained in pre-service teacher training. There's a lot on race and ethnicity and other types of things, but it's a struggle. And so we try as much as possible to do that work, but it's usually when they're already in the teaching profession. And some pre-service teacher training programs do some gender if you have a faculty member that does gender work, right? I mean, if you're in my college, you know a lot about bullying, obviously, because I'm in that building, and gender stuff. Now, the reality is that politics is going to drive the extent to which you can express anything, right? I was talking, I have a number of teachers in Southern Illinois that are in the closet gay, because if they came out, they would be fired. You can still be fired in some states because of that, right? And they usually do this in a way that one of the teachers in Southern Illinois, she was just so fed up with the homophobic language that she ended up giving the entire class a lesson about the oppression of sexual minorities in the fire in New Orleans, right? Because many of you don't know that's one of the most oppressed groups in our country. She did that, and she was called to the office, and she was, closet lesbian, but they didn't know that. But she was fired under the guise that it was not in her place to teach about the oppression of sexual minorities in the United States. She was fired. So, it depends on where you teach, what the politics are, because parents are still uncomfortable now. Back in my day, we knew who the gay volleyball coach was. And everybody knew in the community, but she never talked about it. She didn't bring her partner around, but we knew. That was in the 70s, 80s, a long time ago. So, but not much has changed.
But how do you set an example? Like, how can you say all these things, but you can't live it or act on it?
I agree, I know. So you either not teach there, or you go to a school in which you can express yourself. I mean, it's the same in the workplace. You've got to see, you're teachers, this is a workplace. And if it's hostile, schools can be hostile workplaces, just like anywhere else, you go, wherever you work. Or you go teach music students, and you can do whatever you want, right? I mean, it's just, for me to say, just be yourself and be out there and not recognize the social political climate, it would be naive. Because we are way back in time around gender and sexual orientation, despite the fact that there's been some movement. We still have, the highest percentage of homeless kids in this country are LGBT. Right? High percentage. They've been kicked out of their homes. This is still real. And damned to hell, So, there's a great book on, it's a gentleman out of Madison, Wisconsin that went up to Toronto and hung out with homeless youth and for months, and he wrote a book about kind of their experiences and their overrepresented LGBT Catholic youth that were kicked out of their homes. But you're not going to fix the world, right? And you just think about, when I lay my head down every night, wherever I may be, I say to myself, and I know you're going to think I'm a dork, but I do it. I say, did I impact one child's life today? One. That's all you do. You guys have like way more. And now I start crying. Right? So how many people do, one person saved my life. You probably had one. You didn't come to mind. Took a teacher. Right? I know. It's probably this lecture itself. Saved your life. Okay, so this is straight-laced. Again, there's going to be a link, brownspark.org. They also have Let's Get Real. So if you're in a little bit of a school where they're not going to let you kind of do stuff, Let's Get Real is also really good. These are middle school kids talking about gender as well and being bullied because they don't act like boys or girls. So it's really, 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 really good. I think we're okay, aren't we? Yeah? Traditional masculinity. Okay, so we have that idea. We need to talk to kids. We need to do more of this kind of work. But
culture that's just putting us in boxes. And read, lean in, ladies. Men, read, lean in, ladies. Lean in, Sandberg. One of the only books, non-academic, that I read this year. And I actually have it on my iPad. And when people irritate me, I read it again. I read it, and I'll go, I'm leaning in, and I'm going to, So when you guys negotiate your first teacher salary, ladies, read, lean in first. Aim high. That's a zeros. You don't ask for it, they're not going to give it to you. Aim high. So, negotiate. Okay. This is kind of beautiful, too. So remember those kids we've been following? Right? They're now in high school. So I'm going to show you data that we collected last spring, and then this fall, and it's going to be 5.5 years of data. Now, I got $1 million of your taxpayer dollars to create a lot of circles. And here I was proposing what is called the Malamusk influence model. You need to know that. This idea that we have family conflict, exposure to domestic violence and child abuse, that then over time, and this would be kind of middle school, exposure to this, sibling aggression, will then lead to kind of association with immediate peers and delinquency, engagement in kind of bullying, sexual harassment, but what we're adding here, teen dating violence. And I'm sorry to say that this model fits. It fits, and it's kind of a sad thing. Cohort kids who keeps tracking them into high school. Just so you know some of the constructs, so you can kind of put your head around what we asked for child abuse and domestic violence. We asked, before your age of 9, did you ever hear one of your parents or guardians hitting or slapping or punching each other? So that's exposure to domestic violence. And then, were you physically abused and were you sexually abused? And you should be saying, wow, they let you ask that question? Yeah. Amazing. We didn't have to do anything about it. So it's amazing. Epidemiological research. So we didn't intervene, so it's sad that we knew this information, but the school didn't know it. So yes or no to that. There is a good story there. Family conflict. The extent to which there's this kind of hostility, yelling, arguing in the home is the family kind of conflict measure. And then sibling, verbal, physical aggression, upsetting your brother and sister, hitting back, and just kind of this physical stuff. Delinquency, how often did you skip school, damage property? You should know that these are really what they call psychometrically sound measures. So you should feel good that we are grabbing that latent variable. How bad are your friends too? Birds that are flock together, remember, homophily. Bullying is kind of name calling, it's non-physical. You should do it over time, it's repeated. Sexual harassment is how often made sexual comments, jokes, gestures, touched, or grabbed. So grabbed or pinched. There's a lot of pinching and cornering folks in the corner. And then for dating, I'll give you some trends of what girls and boys are doing when they become violent in dating relationships. We use David Wolf's measure of conflict in adolescent dating relationships inventory. And we ask if they've dated, and then we factor analyze that. That means we take all these items and we put it into a factor analysis, and it tells us where they talk together. Right? And so we have verbal teen dating violence perpetration. We're only looking at perpetration here. Perpetration and victimization are very high because oftentimes boys, when they hit a girl, the girl will hit back in self-defense. When boys hit girls, there tends to be more injury. So you're going to see that the violence perpetration is pretty equivalent, but when a boy hits a girl, they're more likely to be injured. It's not as so name calling is verbal insults, bringing up past behaviors. Relational is spreading rumors, turning friends against. And some of you probably had girlfriends that started dating guys, or you guys had boyfriends that started dating girls and you saw them less. Right? Physical is slapping, biting. This is the thing. This is the way. This is what they like to do right now. Bite. Boys and girls biting is I have to present on Monday to be honest. Let's say the biting is still a problem. Choking, throwing things, and throwing each other out of cars. That seems to be, it's not epidemic. And then sexual force to kiss, or what's called sexual coercion. Okay, so that gives you some idea that this is what we're measuring. So we don't have just one item scales. We're capturing these constructs pretty nicely. You know, we did some missing data imputation. I left that in there just in case there was somebody here that was like, what do you do with missing data? Right? We impute it. Which
means we kind of make it up. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's not true. Anyway, listen here. So kids can come in and out of our study and we still have data, okay? Because you're probably thinking, like, how do you track 1,100 kids for 5.5 years? Really creatively. So I left that in there just in case you wanted to know. So here are some percentages. 31% of boys and girls here did something to make their partner angry. 26% used hostile tone with their partner. 29% kept track of partner's activities. 10% slacked. That's a high number. Those are the highest numbers we've seen as far as physical in high school. It's pretty high. 11% bit. Not in a sexual way. Unwanted biting. Okay? I know what you're thinking. I love this personality. Come on, right there. You're all looking at it. No matter what I'm trying to do. Anyway, 6% forced partners with kids. So these are pretty, so if you're thinking 10% of 1,100, that's a problem. These are the ones that are actually engaging in this, and this isn't victimization, but it's participation. Now, if we break it down by gender differences, you'll see that girls engage in the verbal stuff more than the boys a little bit. But the relational stuff and controlling boys and girls equally. Physical. Now, my feminist friends get so upset that I put this here. Now, I told you I didn't measure fear or injury. But we hit. We didn't have self-defense, but we do hit. We have anger issues. And if we feel abandoned by our partner, we hit them. Okay. And I remember one of these high schools, we have quite a number of folks that identify as lesbian. And so there's also physical aggression in gay and lesbian dating. People think. And they're going to get divorced. After all that trouble, they get contact. They're get divorced. So the conversations I have with my family in Virginia, it's so hilarious. They're like, well, why would they? They fought so hard. I said, they don't get along. They grew apart. Hilarious. This is where I go downhill, and you see what happens. This is what you're going to do. I don't know how you guys are going to teach from like 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. It's loud when you use it. Right? I mean,
You become habituated.
I guess so. No, you just start singing to the video and stuff and identifying instruments. And so there's 18 to 23% that are reporting at least one sexual item. I don't think you need more than one sexual item. When you're asking somebody like, yo, you have sex with me, I'm going to break up with you, that's pretty not a relationship interaction. Okay. Oh yeah, I left all these in. Don't, let me use Rubin's rules. How to use that. And food indices. What are we thinking here, Butch? What do you notice, Butch? What's the mean RMCA? Yeah, 107. Not as like meaty like the other ones, but it's pretty good. Okay, you guys ready for some circles? Oh yeah. Middle school. Think 5th, 6th, 7th grade. Family conflict. Across the 4 waves. Predicts bullying perpetration. So does sibling aggression. Delinquent friends. Predicts bullying. Delinquency predicts bullying. What's not in this that there was a measure right there at the beginning of the measure section that did not make it to this model? Family. Exposure to domestic violence, child and sexual abuse, and physical abuse did not predict anything. Aggression in the family and family conflict predicted bullying, hanging out with delinquent friends. That's middle school, and that's girls. Okay, let's take it to the high school. There's a few more circles. There's no coefficients on there. These are the significant paths. I could have done all the paths, but then we probably would have a seizure. My fun is like this, but we can have some more circles. So here we are. This is middle school. They transitioned. Took me a year to get funding. They transitioned to high school. Delinquency still stays in. You'll see that family conflict falls out. What's more important is their own delinquency, predicting sexual harassment, and look at the physical. Look at all the arrows going there.
will engage in teen dating violence. If we just start talking to these teens here, and we're not talking about sexual harassment up there, we will not be effective in minimizing this. If we do not start talking to kids about bullying in middle school, we will not slow this down. How the hell are we going to touch some of the sibling aggression? I don't know. Right? And so if delinquency continues to be a problem in our school because kids are checking out, because they're not making AYP and no child left behind is actually just increasing the gap, we're going to continue to see intimate partner violence as we grow up. Oh, isn't that beautiful? Your tax dollar at work. Boys, what about those boys? Family conflict does not show up for boys. Now, someone will say, well, why is that, Jordan? Because boys don't stay home as much as girls. Boys run the streets. So they're not there, so they're not really recognizing the family conflict. Girls are really monitored more than boys. Many of you that had brothers and sisters, you know that your parents treated you differently. And so boys are influenced by sibling aggression, but family conflict really doesn't play out. Okay, so sibling aggression really is a variable that we should have more than 5 papers on. I'm just saying. Delinquency, again, same kind of model, except for the family conflict for the boys. And there we go. Roll the home. Beautiful. Now, I really want you to understand that most of our psychological research is based on cross-sectional research, snapshots. So as much as this is one slide in 5.5 years of work, this is, because I can go and say to Congress and Senate, when they say, isn't bullying just part of growing up? I'm like, yeah, that's actually part of growing up, and it's a precursor to teen dating violence. Well, how do you know that? And I pull out this model, and then it shows it. Right. All I see is a bunch of circles. That's right. And those circles imagine your daughter dating. Yeah, and then they're like, that's a different story. Okay. Exposure to family violence is great. So bullying, ultimately the message, and we'll see it in the press because the report just went to Justice, and they will do a huge press release to say little bullies, actually when they start dating, they're still aggressive. It's awesome. Yes.
For the RMSCA numbers, what is considered a bad number? Like, when does it get too high?
0.10. Yeah, so this is, you see I say good fit. 0.03 is excellent. So this is a good fit, then we go adequate, then we go poor. You gonna be a statistician? No. That question, that's pretty good. I like it. Okay, we're just gonna flip through this. So teen dating violence assessments, blah, blah, blah. Need to target multiple forms of violence. For a very long time, we've studied, I haven't, because I've always studied multiple forms. We were talking this, and I sent you Anthony's monograph last night. Is that not gorgeous? Did you eat?
I put the link on Amazon.
Okay. So Sharon Hannigan, John Critch actually wrote this monograph, and it said this, that we need to not just study bullying, sexual violence over here, and other groups of teen dating violence, that we all need to do it together because it's intergenerational and it's also long-term, right? Because what happens with these folks that are engaged in aggression in their relationships are then going into workplaces, and you have to work with them in your school, right? Yes, and you will have quite the time of it. Because there's fun people you're going to work with. Okay, so, who are unique? All right, so there's this huge movement, and I think you're probably part of this generation, we have to empower the bystanders to end bullying. How did that work for you guys? Did you feel empowered? Because I told you to be empowered? Be an ally. Bystanders unite, empower the bystander. Well, that's not based on science in any capacity. So I'm going to show you kind of some of the work, and I can't cite all of it. There's really good work going on in Italy. There's work in Australia that's been going on for a long time. This is complex. And if you're in a school where, that's right, the popular kids engage in these behaviors, and you kind of want to be going to their parties and be seen with them, you're not going to be empowered by the bystander unless you get that popular group to do something. So we understand that kids have different levels of what we call social capital in middle school when she wore an outfit, everybody went out and bought it. Because she was attractive. She's cute. You know? I was telling her. You know. So it's the same way now. We think that we're going to go in and roll out this prevention curriculum and that everybody's going to receive it and we're all going to be kumbaya and hugging and all this. No. We know that kids, if you get those popular kids that set the clothing trends, the music trend, whatever the trends are, if you get them to start being pro-social, then people will follow them because they have social capital, right? And so we know this from industrial organizational psychology, right? We know that when you go in to change a company, you find out who has social capital, who do I need to have on my team. When I go into schools, I'll say to the principal, who's the pain in the ass here that I need to partner up with? Like, who's going to give me some problems? And they'll say, oh yeah, that teacher down there in, 301. And I'll meet her, and I'll be so nice to her, because I know that she will turn all those teachers against me if I don't get on her good side. And you will do this as new teachers. Are you teaching them this? Yes. Who has the power in that building? Who do you need to make friends with? I didn't say you had to like them. Who do you need to make friends with? Don't you? Likability friends is not saying so this is very, very complex. There is a program out of Kentucky, which I was definitely going to fly into Kentucky. Anyway, I thought you guys were from Kentucky. that was wrong. Anyways, but Jacob was really nice about it. Jacob's like, yeah, we're not near Lexington, Kentucky. So, there is like a Baldwin something. So, but I'm in Cleveland. And in Kentucky, they have something called Green Dot. And they had read this industrial organizational stuff. Have you guys heard of Green Dot? Okay. And it's in Ohio, too.
I'm from Lexington, Kentucky.
So you know Green Dot?
Yeah.
You probably went through them. Okay. So they had this idea. It's Coker, Ann Coker. She said, why don't we find out who has social capital? She called them polls, public opinion leaders. Like, who are those kids in the high school that really set the trends and really can shift kind of the norms? Identify them by having, like, who's the people, the who's of who's. You would make a list, right? So then we pull you out, the polls come out, and then we train them around sexual assault prevention. We shift their attitude, we plug them in, we hope we have contamination. Isn't that cool? Right? Right? And so they are having effects on teen dating violence and bullying. And less expensive, right? Versus telling everybody, why don't you tell those people that matter and have them spread the word, right? So it's this peer norming. Green Dot. That's science. Making a video with the popular kids and putting it on YouTube and thinking you've solved your bullying problem isn't science, right? So the willingness to intervene and the bystander intervention is really, really complex, but when it's done right, it works, like Green Dot. So here's the study. Not going into detail, but it'll be fun. So in this particular study, we found that predictors of attitudes and behaviors in folks, that kids are willing to intervene, we have to understand it from a multiple level. So when we look at bystander intervention research, what do we know? Who intervenes? Girls intervene? Because we have an ethic of fair labor. Because boys, we've told you just to mind your own business, right? Young kids intervene up until about 5th grade, right? You teach the elementary school kids, they're nice. The boys hug each other up until like 2nd grade. Okay, right? You watch him. My nephew's 6, he still hugs all the boys and the girls when he leaves the classroom. And I love it, I'm just waiting for that to stop. Because we're like, I'm not going to hug him, probably in 3rd grade, right? And so boys look very differently in the younger age. So it's girls intervene throughout our life, we are the saviors. And young kids, you will intervene if your friends think it's cool for you to intervene. You will intervene if your friends would do it too, right? So it's multiple levels. It's my individual characteristics of being a girl, being younger. And it's also, what would my friends do? In addition to that, do the staff intervene at the school? If you see the staff intervening, you're more likely to have a student body intervene. When the staff don't intervene, the students don't intervene, and if the students intervene and nothing comes of it, they will not intervene anymore. Because you adults don't know what to do. And you actually made it worse. They will tell you this, right? And so they'll just shut down and not talk to you. But here, we have to consider the individual characteristics, but also
research. We did a meta-analysis around, okay, well, people are doing some work in the area of bystander intervention. Is it working? Now, this is really fabulous because we got to the high school effect size, so we went in and we found lots of studies that had different types of curriculum spanning from like 4 months to a couple years. The high school effect size 0.44. That's huge. When there was an intervention in high school, there was a huge increase in kids going in and intervening and helping kids that are being victimized. 0.44 is ridiculously huge. We usually get a 0.13. Okay? Do you see the difference? 0.13, 0.44. Now look at what happens in K through 8. We get our typical 0.13. Okay? K through 8 is much more difficult. The younger kids in K through 5, still developmentally a little easier to move the needle, but here it's very, very positive. So Josh Blanton, who was an undergrad of mine, now is a statistician, PhD, so proud of that, and he called me when he got these results. He's like, we got a problem. Totally the statistician. I was like, we got a problem, Josh. Really? Okay. What's the problem? And he's like, the effect size is huge for high school, but it's really small for middle school. And I said, Josh? He's like, I don't really understand how we're going to explain it. And he's a statistician, not a developmental psychologist. I said, Josh, do you remember middle school? He's like, yeah. What are we talking about? I just want to get the hell out of there. I was like, how was high school? He's like, it's much better. Like, why are you asking me that? I was like, again, think about middle school. He's like, ugly picture. High school, good. I was like, what do you think? He said, I said, would you have helped someone in middle school? No, I wanted to go away. I said, high school? He's like, yeah, man, high school, I would help them. I was like, there you go. When you work with statisticians, you just kind of have to say, like, did you go to school? Can we think through this? Middle school, the last thing you do is intervene, especially if it's the popular group doing this. Especially if they're going to turn on you. When we do focus groups, why aren't you intervening? Because they're going to turn on me if I'm being invited to a party. I'm not, that is risque, baby. That's what they said, risque, not worth it. By high school, we're all just kind of like, whatevs, right? And they see it as being total behavior. We don't really need to do bullying prevention work in high school. I don't care what they say, and that analysis showed that it's actually estrogenic. Remember we said that earlier this morning? You wrote that word down. Oh no, just in case you didn't see that. I like to say that. It's pretty big. Now, what's interesting about this is you notice, this is a high school. This was in, where was it? Multiple states, 9th through 12th grade, build respect. It was an individual program, but the duration was only 2 months long. We go in and do 3 years and still can't move the needle. 2 months. It's based on Evers. This is a theory of change, pre-contemplation, contemplation. You're going to go on that diet, you contemplate, you won't do it, based on theory. Kids actually think, well, I was thinking about helping that kid, but I thought about it. I thought about it. This actually helps them move from pre-contemplation to contemplation to action. And that is nice. And it's nice for me to say to a school, I need 2 months of your time versus 3 years. And you're going to see more intervention. Isn't that powerful? That's the most positive papers come out in a couple of years. We can do something there. So we need to reconsider this. And I'm telling you, we're going through this bystander empowerment stuff, and we're not thinking it through developmentally. We're going to be exactly where we were 10 years ago. We have to think about the age of the target population. Elementary school kids will do things that middle school kids won't do, and high school kids the same. Girls are more likely to engage in these behaviors, so how is it that we can think about boys being of help without compromising their traditional masculinity? Pure and adult norms matter. If you're in a school where there's a lot of bullying, do you think that you can have a lot of intervention? It's a basic behavioral principle. You cannot have two opposing behaviors, right? If my mom says I love you, but then she hits me, you're a little confused, aren't you? Right? It's dysfunctional and pathological. If there's lots of bullying in there, but then we just start intervening after I bully you, this is not going to work. So if we just go into a school and say, we're going to empower the bystanders, I was like, well, one, have you surveyed to know what is going on in the school? And if there's an excessive amount of bullying, you better get that in check before you just put the cart before the horse of intervention. We put the cart before the horse all the time. And what an interesting saying is it? Where the hell's the horse going to go? Like this. Where the hell is the horse going? Jumping about gender roles. I am the difficult person in this country and other countries that I tell the truth. And I expect research and science, because I'm a scientist. Like I say that to people, I'm a scientist. I'm not like, I don't know, I don't read palms. I mean, if I read palms, I'd probably be, I don't know. I don't read palms, I don't predict the future. I like p-values, I like effect sizes. And they're like, well, you don't have to be so mean about it. I'm like, if I were a man, it wouldn't be viewed as meanness, right? It would be science, okay? So, yeah, so I get emails from the bully guru on every other week. He's like, can you just stop bad-mouthing my program in the press? And I was like, can you show me the data? He's like, honestly, from Norway, it's been 20 years of this, right? So, anyway, and if you were watching this, he was like, there she is again. It's showing up everywhere, right? Everywhere. Why the Always program doesn't work in the United States. It's like, stop telling lies. I'm like, so true, you know I am. Okay, so this is the evidence, right? So did you know that we actually don't have any proven programs? Because you're going to go to schools and they're going to say, we got that proven program. And you're going to say, we don't have any proven program. And they're going, no, I went on the website, it says proven. And it could be a retired teacher's program that's down the street. It's going to be that guy in Minnesota that's all tatted up. And he goes in and he does like Scared Straight with the kids. And he was like, stop bullying, God, be true. He's all tatted up and he has earrings, right? And he goes in and he charges the school district $20,000. $20,000 coming out. Whoa. And then the kids go, we will never lose me. So he's gone, right? So now all of this stuff, and it's everywhere. It's marketable. The Kardashians, let me kid you not, the Kardashians are helping Sears with their bullying problem. You know, they're helping us, Sears. The Kardashians are the bully prevention spokespeople for Sears. Now, I'm going to confess to you, I have watched that show, Keeping Up with the Kardashians. Kind of intriguing. I just wonder what they do all day. But I'm still waiting for them to do something besides drink wine and complain. But they're the spokesperson for Sears. You got One Direction for Target. Who am I forgetting? You got other people. Lady Gaga, Ellen DeGeneres, who's probably doing some of the best work. So it's hyper commercialization, right? So we're going to still have a bullying problem, which isn't a bad thing in some ways. It's public awareness, but if we don't move beyond awareness, we're not going to do anything. You know, it's not scientifically based. We're actually failing miserably. This is the evidence up until like 2010, 2011, and it's not. And then I'll give you the update of the 2013 meta-analysis we just did. So Ken Merrill, who's no longer with us, famous school psychologist, and we were trying to do. For years, Ken would call me and say, Dorothy, let's do a meta-analysis. I said, Ken, there's not enough data in this country to do a meta-analysis. And so then he was diagnosed with cancer. He said, Dorothy, we're going to do the meta-analysis. I said, okay, based on what? And so he found 16 studies, and he included unpublished studies, which is just wrong. Because there's a peer review process. You've got to get published. If you don't understand that, I can explain it to you. And so 16 studies, only 6 studies in the United States. This is 2008. This is when we had actually proven programs on the National Register. Which was one of the programs, the Always Bullying Prevention Program, which was on the National Register, but I got it off the National Register, it's not on there anymore. And so 2 of the 6 were published in the United States. So here we have proven programs based on 2 published studies on bullying. And even in those studies are small to negligible effects. We didn't move the needle. The effect size wasn't even 0.13. Okay. Farrington and Toffey, you should write this down, and I think there is a link for this. The Campbell collaboration. Oh, you love this. There's a link for this. All they do is meta-analysis. So if you go to their library, Campbell collaboration, and you put in a search term, so if you want to know, like, music ed on literacy, I'm just totally making that up. Is that good? Music education's impact on literacy, there will probably be a meta-analysis. Right. Was that yours?
I read it. We worked that together.
Okay. Right, so then you know. So that's probably in there. Is it in the Campbell site? Well, not many is in there. Okay. So, okay, that's so bizarre that we came up with that. But there could be other things. It could be like alcohol, substance abuse, right? So Campbell collaboration, and there is a link for that on this watch. I've just helped your studying habits. So So what they found, actually, and they looked at 40 studies, and they found that none of the programs worked in the United States. Right? Very, very minimal. They did work in Europe, and they did not work in the United States and Canada. They were less effective in our country. Whew. Okay, so we were back to the drawing board around 2009. And so what we did in my lab, because I said, what in the world is going on? Like, why can't we? We have these proven programs. The federal government will not give us any money to develop programs because we already have proven programs, right? We have the Norwegian program. But yet there's zero data on the Norwegian program in the United States. And so there should be also a link on there for the National Registry. If you don't know what the National Registry is? National Registry of Effective Efficacious Programs. So it's the federal government does all these studies, and then they kind of put their stamp of approval on programs, right? So you go to this clearinghouse, and the federal government has said, if you want to improve literacy, here are the programs that will do it. And you can go to that site. There'll be links to that site, the target population, the data, the publications, right? So at that point, the only program was a Norwegian program that was on there. And there was no data in the United States that were published. And so my lab, we sat and we reviewed everything that we could possibly get our hands on in bullying prevention. We reviewed about 110 programs from Peter Yarrow's Don't Stop. Oh my gosh, I just sang with Peter Yarrow. Stop Laughing at Me. He sings that song like, you know who he is? Peter, Paul, Mary? Puff the Magic Dragon?
Yes.
Yeah. If you follow me on Twitter, there's a picture of him singing Puff the Magic Dragon. So he has a bullying prevention program. He goes around and he sings. And he sings Puff the Magic Dragon, and the kids are like, what does that mean? Not talking about that. Like, what's that mean, like dragon? Like puffs? Yeah, it's like just like puffs. And so we reviewed all of those, including some social emotional learning programs. And in mind, I was keeping in mind that, maybe we just need to focus on the risk and protective factors. And that basic research. Why do kids bully? What does it co-occur with? What are those kind of things that we need to target? And that's what I started to propose in the literature, pulling out old developmental literature and saying, let's target the risk and protective factors. If we know that these problem alcohol, drugs, dating violence, this, and this, it all co-occurs, why don't we try to think of a framework that would hit all of those risk and protective factors? And lo and behold, what happened in 1994 is a bunch of really smart people got together and came up with a term called social emotional learning. Have you heard of SEL? Okay, there are SEL programs in music as well. Okay, and you'll have a link on your, to CASEL, which is the Consortium of Academic Social Emotional Learning. There's going to be a link at the end of that PowerPoint. If you go there and you click on Roger Weisberg that runs that site, it's one of those smart people in 1994 that said, ooh, social emotional learning matters. You go in there and they've reviewed all of the programs, whether it's like SEL Arts, SEL Drama, it's all there. So that's what we did. And research is the name. And I'm just going to keep flipping through this. And we're going to get to social emotion, just keep it in your head. Now this I want to share with you. This we just published in School Psych Quarterly, which means nothing to you, but it's peer reviewed. Now, this is the cool thing. I want to just show you. Okay, so this study. You'll want this study, so good. Okay, so we went in and we surveyed, I don't know, thousands of kids. How many? Lots of. These are the teachers. So we surveyed about 1,400 teachers across 36 schools. We asked, and teachers, custodians, paraprofessionals, bus drivers, cafeteria workers, everybody, every adult that interacts with a kid, even day hall music teachers. And what we did is we asked them a series of questions about the climate in their school. And so, given time, just know that we did that. And remember, we surveyed the kids as well. And there were 6 scales that the staff or the adults responded to. The extent to which they see students intervening when there's a bullying or violence situation, the extent to which they see staff intervening, the extent to which they think aggression is a problem in their schools, the extent to which there's a commitment on the part of the administration and them to prevent bullying and violence. Commitment to prevent violence, meaning they have administrative support, they have an advisory board that talks about violence prevention, they have opportunities for professional development, they involve the parents around school safety issues, and I'm going on about that because that scale, that alpha is 0.90, and it is a beautiful scale. And then there's the kumbaya, we love each other positive. Okay. greater willingness to intervene. Another easy paper, because what does it say? It says very simply, do something. Oh, do something. Now, you have to say, what do you mean do something? A lot of schools aren't doing anything because they can't make AYP, and they're testing, they're preparing for the test, they're recovering from the test. And so now advisories are going back in the classroom, so that's good. Okay, you guys okay? Hang in there. Okay, I'm going to fly you through these. I don't know what time it is, because they're clock for me. That was good? Okay, we're good. Okay, so back to SEL. So we have done all this kind of work, and I convinced the Centers for Disease Control to give me $1.5 million, and I said, this SEL thing, I know it's a risk, but I think it might work. If kids are better able to communicate with one another, understand what their behavior might be doing, communicate, and that will de-escalate conflicts and prevent future conflicts, I think this will work. And it did. Okay, so this is a randomized clinical trial, and that means we go in and we find 36 schools, we match them in peers based on demographics. This is the goal too, this is what you want to do. This is any drug you take has been through a randomized clinical trial, I hope. Probably not that cost overview, so and so we match them, right? So we have randomized clinical trials. So if you're thinking, oh, are there confounds in the study? They're not. This is the ultimate design of randomized clinical trials. So we match them up. We randomly assign a school to intervention or control. We have 18 pairs. In this particular study, this is published in Journal of Adolescent Health, we had evaluated second step, which is social emotional learning program, target school age and multiple outcomes. And these are SEL standards. Are your SEL standards in your health in this state? Or do you know?
I'm thinking they are.
Yeah. So sometimes in some states, and I think Ohio is, that you will find your SEL standards under health. We're an SEL state, so we have required SEL 50 minutes a week in Illinois, as Roger said. And that we will have eventually national standards because SEL is hot at the national level. So this is we want them to develop self-awareness and self-management. We want them to be able to recognize individual and group differences, improve their communication and social skills. And we also want to, so SEL, what people get confused about is they think it's all just this kind of warm and fuzzy kind of stuff. It's not. It's around decision-making, goal setting, right? It's college readiness stuff. And for your kids that have to prioritize instrument time and practice, decision-making and goal setting is huge. Maybe not that non-music major should, but okay, so why are we even talking about social emotional learning? The only reason that was funded is because of this meta-analysis that was in press since 2008. The only reason I do congressional briefings is because of this meta-analysis. You guys have learned so much about meta-analysis. This meta-analysis conducted by the American Institutes of Research, or AIR, showed that in schools that had SEL programming, it could be curriculum in the classroom, it could be art, it could be drama, it could be after school, it could be whatever it is. If you go to a school with SEL, the kids will have 11, that should be percentile increase in test scores. That is the only reason we're talking about SEL. Because this is what one of my senators said to me. He's like, why do you think that is? I said, well, we're teaching them how to communicate. They feel safer at school. And he said, so being safe at school, that's tied to academics. I was like, yeah. They come to school, they actually can focus on their academics. This is the reason why we did a congressional briefing last year for SEL. That's the only reason. Otherwise, we would just be conjecturing about that, getting those kids to do hugs and kumbaya. I'm making my words. There's some good old boys in the Senate. That's how you have to talk to them. Sometimes you have to say to the staff, did you go to school? Yeah. Was it always safe? No. I had this one kid hitting on me. I was like, could you concentrate? It was hard. It was hard during my time. That's okay. You gotta bring it home. It's another lecture about how to negotiate your policies. So this is a logic model. If you do any research, you should think about your logic model. I teach a whole class on developing logic models, so this is a logic model. Then we're going to have an SEL program. We're hoping that we're going to improve some of the mediators there and then allow ultimate outcomes and decreases in bullying. Okay, this is based on risk and protective factors, bullying, brain research. This is second step in the middle school program, positive approaches and developmental needs. I would say, Dorothy, they've had 41 lessons of social emotional learning. Don't you think something might happen? No one knows. We trained the teachers, they implemented that. And I think part of the reason that I think we've had some success with a caveat is that the teachers were learning SEL as they were teaching it to the kids. I think that'll be my next big grant. And so I'll need to have you guys as subjects. But I think, and I actually am pretty sure that I probably include some marriages. Because I think the teachers probably went home using like the belly breathing and their mindfulness. So I'm thinking I am lowering the divorce rate. This is what happens when you spend way too much time by yourself. You sit there. All right, so lots of activities. So we talked about empathy, communication. Bullying prevention is only 3 lessons out of the 15 lessons in grade 6. So this isn't like slap more ahead of bullying prevention. This is, we're going to give you some skills to communicate. Problem solving, substance abuse prevention. So you guys have all this. I'm just going to flip through it. These are posters that we will put up, and the teachers will refer to the action steps. Problem solving, decision making, goal setting, which the teachers love because there's so much focus in 7th and 8th grade around college readiness. Staying calm. Kids love this. They use a lot of the brain research. We actually educate them about where anger comes from and there's different forms of anger and how to manage their own anger. And coping with stress. And the substance abuse, it's not just say no, it's more of like, you think it's a good idea to start drinking and before you're 21 and go driving on just a week. And they would say, no, that's not a good idea. Anyway, poor Justin, this is a repeat, I apologize for that. Okay, so, go back there. Okay, so 3 years later, and a lot of gray hair, and strike in the Chicago Public Schools, and a fire in 1, and we have results. Kids who were in the second step versus the control condition were 42% less likely to self-report physical fighting after year 1. That's huge, by the way. If you look at Healthy People 2020, they want to reduce physical fighting on the school property by 5% by 2020. It's 2013, guys. This is how good we feel. And that's on a large public health scale. But this is pretty good at 36 schools. After year 2, 53% in the second step were less likely to report homophobic victimization, and 36 less likely to report sexual harassment. Now, some of you are going to say, well, did they tell the truth? It doesn't matter, it's randomized clinical trial. Right? And what's interesting about this is we didn't hit this over the head, sexual harassment and homophobic victimization. Now, what you will notice is we did not reduce garden variety bullying. It's intractable. Until our society changes, kids will still be mean to one another. It's intractable. Right? People aren't telling this to you because it doesn't